Welcome, everybody. It's Lee with Overland Radio, and we're doing something a little different. In this episode, or this, whatever you want to call it, let's call it an episode for ease of sake. But I don't normally do recorded podcasts. Normally we do everything live. But I was given a suggestion, and I'm taking that suggestion to heart. And the first person I thought of was Will from Venture to Rome. So today we're going to have him on. We're going to dive deep into Will's history and dark secrets. Well, maybe not dark secrets, but you know what I mean. So anyhow, thanks for joining us and listening in on this. Do us a favor. Go download our new app. It's on iOS and should be on Android any day now. And listen to some of our streaming music. You'll be able to listen to this episode and other episodes as well. You can send us a message. So go download that, do all the fun jazz. You know what everybody says, that whole thing. So anyway, well, welcome, Will.
I thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you again, Lee.
You're my guinea pig.
Hey, that's fine. I'm very comfortable being a guinea pig. That's just fine.
The funny thing is that, in doing this since 2018, I've had so many people send me messages about ideas. You should interview this person, or you should do this. Or I get the hate mail when I make a joke about something, and it's meant to be funny, but not everybody gets the sense of humor.
Yeah.
And, but somebody emailed me and said, you should try doing more of an intimate kind of, and I hate to use the word intimate because it sounds a little strange, but,
Okay.
but more personal, type of recorded podcast where you don't have all the comments flowing in that make you run down the rabbit holes. But I don't think that's going to stop. I think we'll still run down the rabbit holes.
I think rabbit holes are some of the best parts.
I do too.
If I'm honest.
Yeah. So I sat down and did something I don't do, and that is I gathered some questions.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I think I know enough about you just from some of your videos and past conversations that we've had. And so I think in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a journey and a background. So we'll talk a little bit about your background, your journey, and then we're going to talk about family, if you're comfortable with that, not deep diving into it, but just in general, how, some of the things that you're doing that are so very exciting, how that, affects family and things like that. So we'll go through those. I don't know how long this is going to take. Hopefully, I'll try to keep it to within an hour, which is normally what we do, but Lord only knows.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, let's do it.
So what's new with you first? Let's talk a little bit about what's new with Will. Just,
Well, the biggest thing that's new with me is about a month and a half ago, I decided to quit my job and go full-time YouTube. And so, that's that transition. I'm still very much in the middle of that transition. Cause I think, I don't think it's like you flip on one light, turn off another. It takes time to kind of get used to it. And so that's the biggest thing that's happening right now. But also we're kind of in the middle of summer travel season, summer overlanding season, summer expo season.
Yeah.
All that stuff is happening right now. And so there's just a lot of kind of frenetic energy around all of those things. There's people coming through Boise. Seems like we always have people staying at our house these days because they're on their way. YouTube channels or who I'm friends with will come, they'll stay on their way to somewhere else. And all that stuff is kind of swirling around. So a lot of activity right now, but it's all positive, good stuff.
That's awesome. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how, eventually we're going to get to the point of in this podcast of how you got to where you are now, which is what you just said. You made that change. So I'm going to go back and let's talk about some backgrounds and some journeys. Tell us a little bit about your background in acting, because you did some acting, right?
Yeah, I did.
And how you transitioned to becoming a YouTube content creator. So you were acting at one point in time, then you started creating content. How does those two play together?
I mean, so the connection between actor and content creator isn't that much of a stretch. But also, so I guess the acting thing, I when I was in college, I was encouraged by somebody to pick up an additional major as a theater major. Cause I was kind of auditioning and performing in a lot of the performances that were happening in college. Before that, in high school, I was captain of the football team, and I was also in all the plays. So no one really knew what to do with me. And so this kind of like duality of having your hand in many different areas it feels comfortable to me. But so I graduated with a degree in psychology and a degree in theater, and then I went through this really intense auditioning process for graduate programs in acting and directing. And so there's a terminal degree, which means you can't get a higher degree in this field. It's a master's of fine arts. It's a 3-year master's degree, and it's like practical based. So it's a lot of, it's not academic. It's very practical. It's like you're on stage for 3 years. And they're training professional actors to then go off to New York or LA to have careers. And so I got into this process. Is like, there's thousands of people who apply, right, and they pick 10, so it's just like, it's a good kind of intro into the world of performance, because it's filled with rejection.
Right.
And so I went through this process. I got into schools. I went through this school. I did well at school. I went to New York and kind of did the same process for agents. I got a really great agent in New York, and I spent a lot of time there auditioning and working. So, when you're an actor, your agent helps you book auditions and helps you negotiate your contract and all that stuff. And if you book one of 50 auditions, you're doing okay.
Really?
If you book one of 25, you're doing really good. I mean, so, just think about the level of rejection. For every show that you book, or every job that you book, you've probably heard at least 25 no's. And so that either like makes you resilient,
right,
and makes you kind of compete, or it ruins your self-confidence.
Wow.
And that's why I think a lot of actors have a reputation for being a little nuts. Well, think about that. It's not like you're selling a spoon or a vacuum cleaner. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you are, but that vacuum cleaner is you. And so when you don't get, when they don't buy it from you, it's a personal rejection. So I've always been, I've always kind of leaned into hard work. Like, I grew up on a dirt road out in Weiser, Idaho, and I started working the family business when I was like 5. And, just that kind of approach has always been just ingrained in me, and I don't value it one way or the other. It's just how I've always approached it. It's kind of like, there's no magic, there's only practice. Yeah. And so, I took that approach with acting as well. It's like, I just walk into auditions extremely well prepared. And I did reasonably well. I wasn't famous. I didn't do the biggest shows on Broadway, but I was consistently working. I was working at places all over the country. But at some point, Kate and I, my wife, we're trying to figure out what's phase 2. So we're living in Manhattan, really living the city life. We're going to Europe all the time because it's so easy to go from Manhattan. And we're both from here. Like, we both come back for holidays back home to Idaho. And so, we never really lost our connection to Idaho. And when I was living in Manhattan, I really understood how much I needed to be connected to outside. So if I didn't go to Central Park at least once a week, I would start to get depressed.
Really?
And so, so I found myself in Central Park at least once a week. For, either I'm going there to exercise, like running around the park, or just going there for a picnic, or just finding ways to be outside in this kind of park area. And Central Park is incredible. It's an incredible place.
Oh yeah.
Everyone is happy there, dude. It's like, everyone's like, oh, finally I've got some green space. It's a community thing. Like, there's always people there, but you can find nooks and crannies. You can find open meadows. It's an incredible design.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that it exists in that city the way it does. So anyway, we're trying to figure out what phase 2 is. And my wife's always been an overachiever. Kate's always been really successful, and she wound up getting a job in healthcare back home in Idaho.
Okay.
And so when we moved back, I didn't really have any interest in trying to be an actor in Boise, Idaho, because there's only like 2 theaters, so it's basically just like signing up for unemployment. And I'm sure there's some ego involved there, because I had kind of been a relatively successful actor in New York, and so I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this. So Kate and I both went back to school together and got our Masters of Business Administration. So we both have MBAs. And for a long time, for years and years and years, I shut the door on anything creative.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't involved in being a creator in any form. I was strictly focused on business, and I was strictly focused on startup businesses. So I really thought I was going to be like a startup CEO.
Yeah.
And I did all the roles. I did everything from, intern to COO in these types of companies. And ultimately wound up on the investing side. So the creativity of startups is really attractive to me, but doing the same thing over and over and over again in a company was not. But on the investing side, you see all the new companies, you see all the new business models, and so I actually wound up being developing my expertise on the investing side of things in the startup world, and so. The only thing I did in the arts was I served on a theater board of one of the professional theaters here in Boise for many years. But that was not artistic. It was like administrative. It was strategy. It was business. It was leadership. It had zero artistic kind of output. And so, then my buddy took me. So we bought a Jeep Wrangler. Then my buddy took me off road. He was like, "We have Jeeps. What are we doing? We need to go off road." And so the first time he took me off road, I was like, "Woo, it's inspiring." I'm out here. I'm not used. Like I'm not. I grew up on hillsides and mountainsides. I grew up on a dirt road. Like being in the mountains is not new to me, but exploring it in that way was new to me, and it had been so long.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reawakened something in me, and I like immediately pulled out my phone and started making a video. It's like I need to show people I was here. I just feel like I need to do something. This is so inspiring. It's so incredible.
That's all.
And yeah. And the first video my first act of creativity for, almost 10 years, after being an actor was because I was in my Jeep off road. And that was the first spark of creativity. That's kind of how the snowball slowly began to roll.
Huh. All right. So, that kind of segues into something. So, you after 10 years, so you have this career, you kind of sort of change careers in a sense. And then some guy lights a fire out in the forest, kind of underneath you or in you about, exploring. So, here's my next question. What motivated you to leave? And this all works through what we're going through today, to leave a stable career and then pursue this content creation full time, given the fact that you have all of these other amazing qualifications and background?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. So I think that what happened is I started making videos, and it was something I had never done before. I'd never edited, and I'd never used the camera really. It was all brand new to me. You can put a camera on me and I can talk to it. Mm-hmm. Like I feel pretty comfortable on camera or on stage or whatever. Like that wasn't new, but the act of filming something and then trying to tell a story with it was completely new. And I had a massive learning curve, but the creativity, the expression of creativity was like nothing I'd ever known before. So for someone who is kind of naturally a creative person and who finds a lot of fulfillment in creative endeavors, this was something new. And it was really striking to me. It became really important. And so, I had at the time 2 other jobs, business consulting and investing, a small investing firm that I own. And then YouTube, I started making YouTube videos. And I was, that whole kind of work ethic thing really came into play. So for 2.5 years, I was working an extra job, at least, trying to put out these videos. And I was trying to put out videos that were different than what you see normally. Now, we're all doing the same thing, right? We're all going off road. We're all finding amazing campsites. We're all finding new routes. We bring our family. We don't. it's not that much different if you compare what I do to any other YouTube creator in the off-road overlanding space.
With
And so what's that?
With an exception. I view your content as more of storytelling than just creating content. And for me, personally speaking, the storytelling aspect of what you do or somebody like Caleb does is where it's at. And I think that's what people are starting to migrate to. We could talk a little bit more about that. But I think that your storytelling is what catapulted you a lot faster than a lot of other people.
Yeah, maybe. That is what I focus on. I focus on trying to tell a complete story. Now, I do not try to make a humble brag video. Like, look how great my life is. Look how wonderful this stuff is. I don't find that inspirational. I actually interpret hubris through that when I watch other people's videos. It seems like you're just bragging to me. Mm-hmm. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
It's just, look how great we are.
Yeah.
And I get that, because that's your first impulse when you're like, you just want to show somebody that you did this. Like, I want to capture the fact that this happened because it was so inspiring to me. So I'm not judging it, but that doesn't appeal to me. And creatively, it doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, I really want to try to find the soul of the moment of what that was, and use all the tools we have at our disposal as filmmakers to try to create that moment for others. And there's usually something in there. It's usually not just, look how great this is. It's usually like, here's what we set out to do. Here's the obstacles we ran into. Here's how we were changed as a result of it. And here's also, if you're looking at going to these areas, here's some helpful information. And, here's the history of those areas. All that stuff to me has always been really important. And so those
are valuable nuggets.
Yeah. Well, but it's hard, Lee. It's hard to do that in every video, because that takes a lot more effort. It's really easy to just, it's a lot easier. I should say, none of this is easy. It's a lot easier to take your video, drop it on your editing timeline, and just kind of cut it in order to how things happened. And then and you put some music on it, and that's your video. It's a lot harder for me anyway. And this may not be harder for some people, but it's a lot harder for me to be like, what is the story? Who are the characters? How did we change? Like, all of that stuff. Like, how can I take this 10-second moment and make it special? And it takes a lot of time and effort. And so I guess what I'm saying is, I was doing all that, trying to make myself different, because that's what inspired me, and what I was hoping other people would apply to, it would appeal to other people as well. And while I'm working these other jobs, but the thing that took over my life was YouTube, making these videos. So I'm doing these other things, but the thing that consumed me from the moment I woke up to not being able to sleep at night, because I have to wake up and write something down. I have to write script. I had an inspirational moment. I figured something out. All those, my brain and my heart were totally engaged in this YouTube thing. And so it started to grow. I've been frustrated with how slowly it's grown. And I know, like, it's all relative, because, some people look at me and they think, yo, you're growing so fast. And I'm like, I don't see it that way. But it did grow, and it's been growing, and it hasn't stopped, and it has never stalled, really. And so there's some leading indicators that I have noticed over the years. For example, like when you start hearing from other creators that your work has inspired them, or the comments, when you start seeing a lot of comments on, like, why don't you have 1 million subscribers? That's a good leading indicator, that you're doing something that maybe has popular appeal. When your stuff is blatantly copied by multiple other creators, that's like usually a pretty good sign that, like,
you're doing something right.
You're doing something right. You're there. It's appealing to them. They're trying to emulate you, which I don't judge at all. I find it extremely flattering. When other creators much more successful than me want to talk, like want to actually spend time with me and talk about what I'm doing, what they're doing, like all that stuff had started to kind of develop. And so I reached a point, Lee, where I felt like I couldn't do anything else but this.
Yeah.
And it still carries an extreme amount of risk, because I only have 40,000 subscribers. I don't have so many subscribers that, like, I'm just making more money doing this than anything else. And it's an easy decision. Like, I can just drop what I'm doing because here's where the money is, and that's what I'm going to do. No. I make just enough to put food on the table right now. It was just that inflection point that became really clear to me that like, I need to invest in this. I need to take the risk. I need to stop dipping my feet in the water and just jump in and take these things that have been working and keep doing them and build on it and invest in myself. And that's what led, that's kind of the decision-making process. Now, at home, we have to shore up things and make sure that the risk is manageable. But, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I wasn't terrified.
Absolutely.
Of
I would
doing
think you
this.
were crazy if you weren't terrified.
Yeah, completely terrified, Lee. I mean, it's in some ways it's a really stupid thing to do, but
I don't know.
You know,
I think that taking a risk in something that you're passionate about or that makes you feel fulfilled or whatever, however you want to describe it, I think taking that risk sometimes is worth it. There's nothing that I've said this all along. I say this to my wife all the time, is that I never want to be on my deathbed and thinking, I wished I would have tried that.
Yeah.
Like I love doing this and I wish I would have tried it. Now I can't, or, whatever it is. So I think being terrified, one, I think keeps you humble. It also keeps you focused because you don't want to fail. And, it drives you. So
yeah,
I think you're on the right track.
Thanks, man. Thanks. It's a puzzle. I gotta tell you, it's a real puzzle. So, I don't know how many people understand how it all works, and how, if you're going to invest in it as a full-time business and career, it kind of pencils out. Yeah. There is a common comment, not just on my videos, but on my friends' videos as well, which is like, if they're kind of a reaction against us being sponsored or like mentioning products or making money, having commercial breaks or all that stuff. There's a subset of comments out there and people who like take offense to it almost. It's like, how dare you try to sell me something, or how dare you like make money on this video? And I'll tell you, it's free content. It's like, if this is how you're spending your Saturday night with your family, you're not paying a subscription fee to YouTube unless you have YouTube Premium, which is super cheap. But like, it's not like Disney Plus. Yeah. It's not like Netflix. You're not paying for it. You're seeing ads and commercials, and that's how these creators continue to have unique voices that people want to watch. And so, but it's really, really delicate because YouTube is a personality-driven platform. It's my face and my personality on camera, and the minute that it becomes inauthentic, or the minute that it starts losing integrity, is the minute my prospects begin to diminish and my audience feels a disconnect with me. And that is something that can really damage a channel. And we all have examples of that where it's happened to other channels, right?
Yeah.
But there is pressure to make it all work. There's, when a company reaches out to you and they're like, we want to pay you X thousands of dollars to, make a video on our product. It's like, woof, I need to, can I make this work or not? And it's daily. It's a daily occurrence that I have an inbox full of requests for things. And so it's like, how do you manage that? How do you manage that? Maintain integrity, make the business work, and keep growing the channel. And so to me, that is terrifying, challenging, but also really exciting to try to figure that out.
I have very vocal views on the difference between a creator and an influencer, and they're different. And a lot of people will argue with me and say that they're not, and that's okay. I see creators as one way, and I see influencers as a different way. Can you blend the two together? I think there's some overlap space in there that's justifiable and necessary. If someone in your position is going to go full-time in YouTube, you do have to make the business work, because now this has become the business.
Right.
But the problem I've seen in the past is a lot of creators turn into influencers.
Mm-hmm.
They
sometimes permanently, sometimes temporarily.
right. You know, it's like I could think of, and we're not going to mention some names right now because I don't want to put you in that kind of position. But there's you know a guy that's south of you in that state down there, and I don't know that I've ever been more ticked off at a guy listening to a conversation with him as I was one day at an expo. And I thought to myself, this is exactly why I don't watch your stuff anymore, because you've become that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
well, here's the thing. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, and so I just, you know, I get frustrated. There's a lot of YouTube creators, and I know that, listen, your life will change and evolve as you're doing this. And we all know that. So, you know, as things go, the kids get older, you change, you know, a little bit about how you're going to create content, and things change. I can think of a channel, and don't misunderstand me when I say this. I think they're great people, but you take Lifestyle Overland, when they first started their first 3 years or so, I couldn't get enough of their channel, their content. Now
Right.
I'm just, there's no more story. It's just, we're here, we're there, and the videos are good. Don't get me wrong. But man, I missed a story where each week I was looking to tune in that Thursday night when they put the new episode out and they continued that Alaska journey and they picked up where they left off. Or Sean at the Story Till Now does the place, you know, whatever it is across Canada, and it's like 4 or 5 episodes. You know, I mean, damn, that's the kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
But so what you just said is terrifying, because
it is.
And here's why. Because like, at what point do you get bored with seeing me? You know what I mean? Like, at what point do you get bored with watching Venture to Rome videos or seeing Will say the same thing or kind of do the same thing that he's done over and over and over again? Is it years? Is it months? Is it a number of videos? You know, like that. So this is what's terrifying about YouTube. And so like the act of creativity in my mind is what will keep audiences coming back, and what will keep me fueled by it, because you can turn this into an assembly line business. You know, you shoot it one way, you always get the important shots.
Yeah.
You throw it down on the timeline, you edit it that way. You kind of have the same kind of music, but it's always different, but maybe, you know, it's very similar. And YouTube rewards you for that.
Right.
So YouTube wants you to be the same every time, maybe just a little bit different, the same. I'm looking at very popular channels like Matt's Off-Road Recovery. It's the exact same formula every single time. The thing that changes is the situation in the rig. But even that we've probably seen 10 times, right? We've seen 10 versions of this rig getting stuck, or 10 times we've seen this, you know, Honda Accord get stuck.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same but different every time. And YouTube rewards you for that. And when your audience starts to lose interest because it's the same thing over and over and over again,
YouTube that slaps your hands.
It does. And it's just that is truly the puzzle, man. And that's what gives me the most anxiety about the future, because Kevin makes outstanding videos.
He does.
And he's built something that's really admirable. His audience, his subscriber base, his Patreon base, you know, his experiences. He's got more miles than just about everybody.
Yeah.
There's nobody out there who has more miles than Kevin. I mean, there might be somebody who's close, or maybe, you know, with small increments differences, but like, you talk about people who've been out there on the road. I mean, he's it, you know, he's the bar. And so, you know, the fact that you're saying, I don't know, I don't really like the watch.
It's not.
That's it. It's a casual decision on your end, Lee. Yeah. Because you're the consumer. You're like, I don't know. I don't really like it anymore. I don't know. I started wearing this red shirt. I don't like it. So I'm just going to watch something else. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. But here's the difference. There was a point in time where my daughter and I sat Thursday night waiting for them to post the episode. Now I just catch it whenever.
Yeah. Look,
and the content isn't any less. It's still great content, but it's lost the story, and it's lost that emotional connection of, in my mind, where you dream of going, I'm going to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's what scares me is that there's a big unknown. I don't know if that same thing will happen to me, or if I can keep finding ways to innovate and be creative and kind of reimagine things, or come up with different kinds of trips, come up with different, sub plots, not that I write anything before we go, but like if I'm trying to do two things at once, like I just finished filming an Oregon series where we're definitely out overlanding, but we're building a new route that we're launching through Onyx, and it's quite the route. It's 1,000 miles across Oregon. And then you've got two narratives that are happening at the same time.
Absolutely.
But like, that's just one video series. I'm talking about like 50 videos a year over years and years and years.
I have faith in you, man. I have faith. I think you have a creative, a good creative sense about you. All right, let's ask this question real quick. How has your MBA influenced your approach to content creation and running your YouTube channel? Now, you did kind of touch on that back there. We talked a little bit about it being the business, but I mean, having an MBA, not to put you too high up here on this pedestal, okay, but I mean, that's a heavy accolade.
Yeah. Well, that probably depends on who you ask. But like, that's a really great question, because when you're in business, especially where I specialize, which is in startup businesses,
right?
You're the thing that kills businesses is lack of customers, right? When you don't have customers, you don't have a business. And so when you're designing a new product or designing a business, you have to have product market fit. You have to go find the market and develop the market for your product, which means that you should be solving a problem in the market. Like you should be making something better, easier, enhanced, in a way that people enjoy so much that they want to pay money for it. That's the basis of starting a new business. You think of any business that you've ever been to, that's ever existed in all time and eternity, and it's some version of that, right? Solving a problem in a great way that so there's an exchange of value for money.
Right.
And so in YouTube, that approach is every single video, dude.
Yeah.
Every single video, or when I'm thinking about videos to make, places to go. Like, should I do more Idaho content? Because that's my specialty and that's my like intellectual property, is I know Idaho really well. Or should I go to other places because there's more people there? Like, should I go do Utah content because there's more people who live in Utah who search for Utah content and there's a bigger market there, or Oregon content? And so the truth is that you just have to experiment. You have to experiment with product market fit. You have to try things, you have to fail, and you have to learn through your failures. And that process in business is almost exactly the same in YouTube. It's just happens a lot faster.
All right. Let's move to a little family and personal life. You ready?
Okay.
And if this, we may have to, I actually have quite a bit here, and I'm really enjoying having this conversation and diving deep into some things. So we may end up doing a part 2. How would you feel about that?
I feel just fine about it, man. I'm here. I'm having a good time.
So we'll do a few more, and then maybe we'll do a part 2. Okay, let's talk about how are you balancing your family life with Kate and the kids while still managing the YouTube channel? Because kids have things that they have to do with school. I mean, heck, you guys had snow up there, I think, today, didn't you?
Yeah,
up in the high elevations.
Yeah.
Montana had it, So if you're planning a trip, how are you balancing all that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the recurring comments that I got from people when I announced that I was going to go full time on YouTube, outside of like tremendous support and positivity, it was overwhelming. It was just overwhelming. But people were like, "Oh, great! Now you can go do more stuff. You can go do longer trips. You can go do this. You can go do that. Can't wait to see all the big stuff. Like, oh, great! Will's going to the Arctic Circle. Will's going to Alaska. Will's going to do Trans-America Trail. It's like, well, wait a minute. I still have a very successful working wife who's on a business schedule, and I have kids in school who are on a school schedule. And so if I leave for 4 weeks, well, who's going to take the kids to school? Well, that's a big burden to put on my wife.
Yeah.
Who's gonna, take them to their taekwondo practices and their school plays, and who's gonna, and especially my wife is a very successful person in business, and has a lot of responsibility, and it's just it's a big ask, and so I have to be really careful with when I choose to leave if I'm going off by myself,
Right.
and really strategic about that for the business. So what I don't want to do is leave the house for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, go make a video series and have it tank because no one's interested in it.
Right.
And so there's a lot of research that goes into some of these things where I will be leaving on my own because I can't go with my family, but also trying to bring the family with me as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
So, school's out, it's summer. I took about a week to go do this Oregon route with my best buddy, Chris, and I brought my son with me. And my daughter is old enough now; she can stay home alone a little bit, and it was less burden on Kate when I was gone. And that's just one example on how I have to be mindful of the family. We're still going to go out and do family trips. We've got big family trips planned that we're going to do. We're doing BDRs, or we're making our own BDRs, and we're going to do a trailer trip right after Expo. That'll be a week-long off-road trailer trip. We're going to work in some wine tasting, in Western Oregon. So I'm calling it Winer Landing. And
Lauren's going to give you a trailer again after that last.
Yeah. He's giving me 2 trailers this time. So, he hasn't learned his lesson yet. Yeah. So, in any case, it's a real balancing act. I'll tell you my schedule right now, Lee. So my kids are in summer camps. I get up at 5 a.m. I edit and work on the business and try to get my, priorities set for what I need to get done. And then I get the kids up at 6:30. And we get them kind of ready for the day. We need to leave around 8 or so they can get to their camps, which are totally in different areas. My son's in a soccer camp. My daughter's in a musical theater camp right now. And so I'm driving all over. I drop one off. I go to a coffee shop while I stay close to one of those camps. I work as much as I can from my laptop. I edit, I do all kinds of things, write scripts, all that, while that camp is going on. And as soon as it's over, I pick them up, I come home. And then I kind of have landed for the day, and I can be more productive. And that's probably at like 2:00 in the afternoon. And that will go until these camps finish. and then the next camp will start, and who knows where that one will be. And so that's just an example of like, my time is not completely my own. I'm still a family man. I'm still a supportive spouse, and I try to still be there for my kids. But I do have a lot more time. I can shoot a video during the day. I can go do a rock crawling trail during the day and shoot that. I can go shoot installs and build updates and topical educational videos really easily now, where before I just couldn't. Those would just creep out whenever I could cram them in between trip videos. And so that's probably the biggest difference, but I do have to figure out what my content strategy is going to be, because I don't think I can do what Sean does at Storytell Now. I don't think I can just do a trip video every week. Well, yeah. And he leaves his family. He's got a family life and a setup at home that really works that way. And I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. My kids are too old. I got to get them places, and my wife can't work from home. She has to go into an office. She does sometimes, but she's got to go into an office. And so, I don't think I can do that. And so I got to figure out what those other video types are going to be.
You'll get there.
Yeah,
what roles are speaking of kids and Kate, what roles do they play in the YouTube channel other than just being in the content? Is there something behind the scenes that they do to help you? Kate, in some, shape, form, or fashion, I'm sure, does, something with you. What about the kids? I mean, what's their roles outside of just being in the video?
Yeah. So my kids are learning cameras. My son,
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yeah. My son loves working the camera. He loves anything that's like got buttons on it,
Yep.
so he loves and screens, he loves to, do that stuff. So, he's starting to film more and more and more, and I'm starting to use more of his shots. It used to be like, hey, I'm going to give you this GoPro so you can just have fun and feel like you're part of the camera crew. And it was just, it was just total
And then
garbage.
when you watched it, you're like,
yeah, I was like having a seizure.
Dizzy.
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah,
sick.
exactly.
Yeah.
But no, he's really developing an eye. My daughter she has a really good eye for framing things.
Oh,
And so they're getting involved. They've always been involved, but they're getting involved more that way.
good.
Kate is fantastic. She has a photography background, so she knows how to frame things. She's always been a fantastic camera person. And so when we're out on a trip, yeah, that's kind of a family affair to capture what's happening and shoot the trip. Kate drives a lot. Now we're doing a two rig setup. So, she's driving all the time. It used to be like she would drive while I would fly the drone. And I would jump out and get a bunch of handheld shots as we were driving and stuff like that. And so now we're trying to figure out how to film a little bit differently. But the cool thing is, I'm able to get more of her on camera, like more of her perspective, how she's feeling and what she's seeing. And it gives another dynamic, I think, to the videos. And then in the post-production part, I have a very opinionated family. Everyone has an opinion, a very strong opinion.
Yeah.
And, but I run things by Kate a lot.
Good.
And she gives me a lot of creative input, and she's, I get a lot of input from other people too, because I really enjoy getting feedback, but she's the person who I listen to probably the closest. And she's almost always right. She's almost always right when she's like, that's pushing a little too far, or like, oh, that's like, you need to make that shorter. Well, like, you're droning on forever. Or like, this music does not work for me. I had this, here's a really good example. I had this edit of, what trail was it? Oh, it was the trail I did with Brad and Sean in Utah. We did a trail called Behind the Reef, I think is what it's called. And it's just like a perfect off-road trail. Had a little bit of everything. And it's really, really beautiful. And I did this intro that was to the music Ave Maria, like a cappella.
Yeah.
Ave Maria. This is like, just like beautiful music. And she was like, and I was like, what do you think? And she was like, that's awful. And I was like, what do you mean it's awful? She's like, it is so precious.
Oh my God.
Like, you are so like,
right
she's like, you don't need to slap us in the face with a song like Ave Maria. Well, she was like, save that bullet for something else.
Oh gosh.
Like, don't spend it there. And I re-edited it, and and it's way better now. But that's a good example of, like, I might go down a path and she'll be like, you got to back up, buddy.
Yeah.
Redo the whole thing. It is not landing.
That's not working. I think that's awesome that you have that dynamic between you two, that you can do it. And she knows that you have that a much deeper creative outlet that you missed it in that one. Go back and try it again.
Oh, you can at some point, you can kind of like to smell your own farts too much when you're, you get kind of hooked on an idea, and you're like, oh, this is going to be so good. And you see that a lot on other videos. And I see it. I'm like, oh, that was pretty self-indulgent. Like, what are we doing here, folks? So that's great.
All right, let's talk about some content creation. And you kind of touched on it earlier, but here's what we'll do. How about we'll finish this part of it, and we'll call this one a wrap, and then we'll come back and do part 2.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there, but I don't want to keep you too long, because I know you've probably got a lot going. So let's talk about content creation. Your typical process, and you don't have to go to like great detail, but what's the typical process from going, I guess, the concept of the video to preparing, for the video, to shooting the video. And obviously we know the part about, editing the video, but how do you get there? What usually sparks you?
Yeah. Great question. So there's like different kinds of videos. If you're talking about a trip video, there's really not any planning that goes in to like, what are we going to shoot before we leave on the trip? There is a lot of, do I have everything I need to capture this? There's a lot of like, how am I going to set the cameras? There's I have a lot of anxiety around like, are we going to miss something? Like,
Right.
you know, how do we shoot this? How do I get more different, interesting shots? It's not just dash cam and drone. You know, all that stuff. I think there's a little bit of planning that goes into it, just in general shot selection and equipment. But then you experience the trip and you try to capture the experience, and then you try to make a video that does it justice. And that's basically it. I do a lot of script. Clearly, I do a lot of script writing, but it's always after the fact. You know, like I don't try to lay anything onto the trip to make it a video, to make it a better video. The only thing that I think that you can do is choose where you're going and choose like a level of unknownness. So like do the Oregon BDR, but do it in winter. You know what I mean? Like you're adding a lot of drama into that video right off the bat. And so, but you're making that choice ahead of time because you know there's going to be difficulties and you're going to film those difficulties. I mean, that's kind of how you could structure it a little bit, but then you're not doing anything in the video to try to make it extra dramatic or to try to create a problem that's not there. The minute you do that, I think you start losing your audience,
Right.
Because if they don't catch it once, they'll catch it next time.
Yeah.
You know, it's so I'm pretty strict there. But then there's other videos, you know, there's all kinds of topics that you can do. And when it comes to those videos, for example, I'm working on one right now, which I'm going to put out this weekend, which is how to get the most out of your time at Overland Expo Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
I want to put it out this weekend because OXPNW happens next weekend. And I want people to watch it before they go. And so that, you know, it starts first, you have some ideas that's timely for me. So I shot a whole video last year at PNW and I never published it. I have all this footage. And I just didn't want to make a video about it. It didn't, I was like, what's that?
You didn't feel it? Just like, you know, when it's done, you were like, I just don't feel like this is what, you know, it's my best stuff. I don't want to put it out.
It just felt like a waste of effort to me.
Okay.
I never made the video. I never even started editing it. It felt like everyone else had already made a video about Overland Expo Pacific Northwest. And like, what am I going to add here? What value what I'm going to do? Like all the best kitchen sinks I could find. Like it just felt like an exercise in trying too hard to be relevant by putting out a topical video. And so I try to filter it by like, what's going to be useful? Like what would really help somebody? Okay, well, if someone was shopping for rooftop tents, you could do, okay, here are the rooftop tents of Overland Expo, right? Okay, but like Welcome to the Outdoors does a fantastic job of doing
Braxton's
that.
the best.
He's incredible. He doesn't miss a single vendor.
No.
And so I don't need to
he's
do
the
that.
best, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and he's a good friend of mine.
I love the guy.
Yeah, he's a great friend of mine. In fact, he was here on his way up to Alaska.
Yeah, with Enoch.
Yeah, yep. And so it's like, okay, well, how's this going to add value? And for me, I got to go through a process of brainstorming ideas and then having a criteria that I screen them with. And value is the biggest thing. Like, how can we make a video that adds value? That's why sometimes I do a video with other people, because I think like a lessons learned video, like here's what you should do overland, or tips. Here's tips that we can pick up that might help you as an overlander, is way more powerful if you're broadening your inputs. You've got, you know, not just Will and his travel in his Jeep, but you've got 5 other YouTube channels, and they have different rigs and different setups and different tips, and they have different terrains and all that stuff. And that adds more value, I think. So
yeah.
So that's part of what I try to screen my ideas with. But there's a couple buckets. There's like gear, you know, every company wants me to make gear videos, and they'll pay me to make gear videos. And there's, you know, that's a very attractive thing to do, but you have to be really careful with gear videos. So like, it's like, I can't just make a video on a battery, you know, like there's a billion battery companies, and they're like, please take our money to make a video about how great our battery is. And I just say no to all of them. I just say, I don't even return their emails. Like, no, unless there's something that's novel, that's really, really interesting, that might actually be useful to somebody, that is a new innovation of some sort, or that has solved a problem for me. So
Oh
yeah,
man, the things that are going through my head right now. You know,
yeah,
you say stuff like that, it resonates with a guy like me because I look at those types of videos, Will, as videos where you're going to put your stamp of approval, not in a literal sense, but you made the video, you talked about the product, and as a consumer, you know, or a consumer goes out and buys it because you did a video, and then it turns out to be garbage.
yeah.
You've lost some of your credibility.
Oh, totally.
And one of the things that I see with influencers versus creators is you will find, and I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, is that there are some people on YouTube who make a video and they swear this is the greatest thing that has ever been invented until the next one comes along.
Yeah.
And then they're selling the one that they got, and now they're on to the next one. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot of those out there. And I see them frequently. And I don't know if other people notice it or pick up on it, but I like the fact that you're very cautious and mindful of those type of things because there are people who I refuse to watch anymore because it's every time you turn around, boom, boom, boom. This is the greatest one. Battery, fridge, I don't care, whatever it is.
Yeah. So here's an example of how I'm approaching this year. I've been doing rooftop tent content, but it's the problem that I'm trying to solve with rooftop tents is one that frustrates me to no end, which is that we're expected to spend $4,000 on a rooftop tent without having ever seen it. Mm-hmm. And it is so frustrating. I have been on the buying side of things where I bought it and I regretted it.
Yeah.
But you can't send it back. You can't return it.
Right.
Like there's like this no return policy. So my take is to educate folks on rooftop tents the best that I can. And I'm a guy who spends a lot of time in rooftop tents. And so I have a very practical opinion on them, how much they've cost. I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of my own dollars on these things.
Yeah.
And so what's more valuable, I think, so I've done kind of like, here's what this tent is, and here's my review of it. But I think what's more valuable to the user and what I'm going to do more of next is just comparisons. It's like, okay, you want a super light tent? Here's this super light tent versus this super light tent. Here's what they are. Here's what I think. Here's how much, all to me that actually brings more value and helps folks decide what kind of tent they want to buy. And if they're choosing between these two things, like here's some data points. So that's my approach on rooftop tents. I have 7 awnings that I'll be comparing. I think I have 10 refrigerators now that I'll be comparing: small fridges, big fridges, expensive fridges, cheap fridges, used fridges, to help people make those buying decisions, but not to say that one's better than the other.
Right.
Because
that's the key.
And if a brand pays me to feature their product, it's one of the things that I'm really adamant about is like, I don't accept any of your talking points. Like before you should know this, before you send me a product, you should know, you get zero creative input. You get zero. You can't tell me what to say.
Right.
If I don't like the product, I'm going to send it back to you, or I'm just not going to make a video on it, and you're not going to pay me any money to do it. It has to be something that's good to me. There has to be a reason to integrate it. And it has to work that way. Anyway, I have, by the way, I have 0 sponsorships for rooftop tents, for awnings, for refrigerators. I have companies that have sent me their stuff because I told them I'm doing comparisons, and they're like, well, we want to be in that mix. Can we send you one? And I say, sure, you can send it to me. I'll be honest about it. I'm not going to say like I went out and bought this when I didn't. But it's a mix of things that I paid for, things that have been sent to me, things that my friends' fridges, my friends, So anyway, that's my approach to that, to try to add value. And then there's educational content, like how do you find a campsite? What are the things to be afraid of? So one of the videos I'm scripting right now is what are the things that you should be afraid of and what to do about them. So like wildlife, like how afraid should people be of wildlife? There's people out there who should be more afraid of wildlife than they are. And there's people out there who should be a lot less afraid of wildlife than they are. Right. And so
totally.
So where do they go to find out what they should do about it? Right. Yeah. There's not a lot of great resources in overlanding. And so, I'm going to do my best to bring in somebody from like the Idaho Fish and Game, to talk about, well, rattlesnakes, here's here's the real deal on rattlesnakes. Here's what you should do. Here's how you should act. Black bears, wolves, grizzly bears, those things that keep us up at night. When the wind's blowing, we think there's a bear trying to get into our tent. Well, what would you do? What would be your checklist of actions to take? So that's kind of that educational bucket. Yeah. So that's the thing. So you point to the gun, and it's like, well, you should have a firearm with you. And like, here's the thing.
There's other solutions though. That's not the only one.
Well, so let's just walk through this scenario, because I have been through this scenario to varying degrees. You're in your tent. It's at night. You hear something, and you are sure that it's an animal in your tent, right? And so the first thing you do is think of, how can I protect myself and my family, right? And if you have a firearm with you, that's kind of the natural first thing to grab, because this is the be all end all, right? However, we're talking about wildlife, folks. We're not talking about like burglars. Like, so the first thing that you should probably do is grab your keys, which should be with you in the tent, press the panic button.
Yeah.
Right? Honk, 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 honk. That's going to clear out 99% of anything that's in your camp right there.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you need to do.
Yeah.
Now, if it's something that is aggressively getting into your food source, so there's been stories of packs of wolves and coyotes that are relatively undeterred. They'll come back because the food is so compelling. Grizzly bears the same way. Black bears a little bit, but they need to have already been conditioned. So this generally only happens in a campsite where they'd be that aggressive.
Yeah.
Like a campground, where they had been kind of conditioned to humans. So, and then what's your next step? Okay, well, it's not shooting at an animal in the dark, probably.
Because you don't know.
But you could shoot in the air. You could unzip a window. You could point your handgun up in the air, and the sound and the smell of the smoke is probably enough to clear out your other 2%. And then you've got that 0.0001% where you need to actually take some level of action against wildlife. And I think people need to hear these steps, these approaches from an expert, not me, in order to, know what to do when they're out there. So some people are like, oh, maybe I've never thought about that. I just thought I'd be okay. Maybe I should have some kind of a plan. Some people are like, oh my God, I feel so much better now.
Right.
Yep. And I can go out and I have a checklist that I could follow should something happen. So that's the other kind of content that I'm working on in terms of content buckets.
I think that's great. That's something you don't see. So I think that's fantastic. All right. Well, let's do one last question, and then we'll wrap it up, and then we'll come back and we'll just make this a little series. And because, dude, I have so much stuff about your Jeep I want to know. I want to know about some adventures. I have stuff on, we've talked a little bit about your community and the audience, but I want to dive deeper into that kind of stuff and some of the future plans, challenges, all kind of stuff. But tell me about your gear that you use to create this content.
Oh, like my camera gear and my editing gear and stuff?
What's your favorite piece of gear? Or what's your go-to?
My go-to, it's always changing, man.
Is it really?
It's like
okay.
I spend so much money on camera gear.
Yeah, no.
My favorite piece of gear at the moment is a new lav mic. It's a Sanken COS 11D lav mic that is like having a boom mic strapped to you. It's a really high quality mic that you can wear on your body, that you can wear it in a way that blocks it from wind, that blocks it from scratching sounds of your clothes. And it's a total game changer for me in terms of getting clean audio. Because I have not been great at that. My other, this is so nerdy, dude. My other favorite new piece of equipment are really fancy ND filters. So an ND filter, neutral density filter, is basically like sunglasses for your camera lens, and it allows you to change your aperture in ways that, like when you see the blurry backgrounds, that's because your aperture is super low or super high, super low, which means that it's opened up and a lot of light's coming in. Well, if you do that on camera, it's going to be super washed out. And so you put these sunglasses on your lens so, you can get a better shot. So I got fancy new ones that I really, really love. My go-to camera is probably my Sony ZVE1.
Nice.
Which is it's a full frame mirrorless camera, and I have Sony G Master 16 to 24 on it, I think, or 16 to 34. And then I have my other camera is a Sony FX3, which is very, very similar to the ZV-E1. It's just heavier. It's more of a cinematic kind of build. And that has a Sony G Master 35 to 70. And that's probably my favorite lens. It's just I can just get the best shots.
Probably, I think that's the one that you can do just about anything with.
I just love it, man. But the ZV-E1 is a much lighter camera, and it's what I use a lot of times when I'm driving. I'll use that out the window or on the dash instead of using a GoPro. I hate GoPros with a passion. They're junky, janky pieces of crap that take terrible like footage. I really, really hate them. I've been burned by them so many times. Like they just don't work. And so to the extent that I can start getting rid of those GoPros, I'm going to do that. Yeah.
So I have a Canon R, and I'm like you, I kind of geek out on that. You can't see it here, but I just bought the new big Roadcaster deal. I have have you ever heard of a YOLO Live?
No.
It's this device.
Oh, interesting.
And you have HDMI ports. I put 4 cameras on here, microphones, all kind of stuff. Boot this up, and it has a cellular connection, and I can go live just with this box.
Wow.
And
that's impressive. Yeah.
So then I bought Hollyland. I like Hollyland stuff. So I have wireless transmitters. I have their lav mics and stuff like that. So yeah, I like to geek out as well. So here's one of those things, I have one of those new Ronin.
Like a Ronin 4D?
No, it's I don't know, whatever that gimbal.
Oh, you mean the gimbal? Oh, like the RS,
gimbal.
The RSC3 or whatever. Yeah. Those are great. Those are really great.
So anyway, all right. Well, we've come up on an hour. Well, actually, we've done an hour and a minute. By the time I edit a few things, we should be right at an hour. But how about we do this? We come back and we do another episode if you have time, and then I'll compile these all together, and we'll go from there. So, real quick, let's make sure we put this in here. I'll add it to the notes and everything. But how can everybody find you on the socials?
You can find me at Venture to Rome. It's Venture, the number 2, and then Rome is ROAM, not the city in Italy. It's Venture to ROAM, and that's on Instagram, on Facebook, and most importantly on YouTube.
Because that's where it's at.
For me, yeah.
Well, I'll add all that to the notes too as well, and we'll have some on-screen stuff when we get done editing. But everybody, thanks for listening. We'll be back and do another part. We'll follow up. We still have a lot of stuff to go over. I mean, like I said, there's Jeep Gladiator content that I want to hear about. There's future plans. There's community and audience and all kind of stuff to have. So we'll have to pick Will's brain a little bit more. And thank you for being so gracious with your time with me and hanging out. I know you're a busy guy, and I do appreciate it.
Hey, man, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a ton of fun. Anytime. Let's do this again for sure.